"Get out of here, Dad. You're embarrassing me." Those words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest as I stood in my son James's driveway at 10:30 p.m. on December 22nd, snow falling on my shoulders. "What did you just say to me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. James glanced nervously at the window behind him, where Charlotte's, his wife's parents, were sitting at the dining room table, wine glasses in their hands, completely oblivious to the fact that their host was currently destroying his relationship with his father on the front porch. "Look, Dad, you drive a 2015 Honda Civic and work construction. Charlotte's father owns half the commercial real estate downtown. It's just awkward, you know? You wouldn't fit in with her family." Awkward. The man who raised him alone for 12 years was now awkward. The man who sacrificed everything so James could have the life he wanted was now an embarrassment. "So I'm not good enough for Christmas dinner with my own son?" I asked, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. "It's not personal, Dad. It's just business." Image matters in Charlotte's world. I pulled out my phone, and James probably thought I was going to call someone to complain or maybe beg for another chance. He was wrong. The gift I was planning for his engagement party in 3 weeks was going to be absolutely unforgettable. If you want to see how a father's love can turn into the most calculated revenge when his own son betrays him, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to get very interesting. What happened next changed everything between me and James forever. My name is Henry Carter. I'm 48 years old, divorced, and I'm a general contractor in Cleveland. That 2015 Honda Civic James was so embarrassed about. I bought it with cash after completing a 6-month renovation project on the east side. No car payments, no debt, just honest money from honest work. I lived in a modest ranch house on Maple Street. Nothing fancy, but every inch of it I built or renovated myself. The hardwood floors, the kitchen cabinets, the deck out back where James used to do his homework while I grilled dinner. All of it came from these hands. After my divorce 12 years ago, it became just me and James. His mother Sarah decided she wanted a different life, one that apparently didn't include a blue-collar husband and a 7-year-old son. She moved to California with her new husband, a real estate investor who drove a Mercedes and wore suits every day. I could have been bitter. I could have let that destroy me. Instead, I threw myself into raising James and building my business. I worked double, took weekend jobs, turned down dates because James had soccer practice or needed help with his science project. I was proud of my work. There's dignity in building things, in creating something solid with your own 2 hands. When people drove past houses I renovated, I point them out to James. "See that porch? Your dad built that? See those windows? I installed every single one." I raised James to value character over appearance, respect over wealth. I taught him that a man's worth wasn't measured by his bank account or the car in his driveway, but by his integrity, his work ethic, and how he treated people. I taught him that real success meant being proud of what you do, no matter what others thought about it. Standing in that driveway tonight, listening to my son call me an embarrassment, I realized something that cut deeper than any insult he could have thrown at me. I completely failed as a father. All those lessons about character and integrity, all those talks about treating people with respect regardless of their social status, all those years I spent trying to show him that a person's worth isn't determined by their wealth, James learned none of it. Worse than that, he'd learned the exact opposite. The son I raised to value character had become the kind of man who judged his own father by the car he drove and the clothes he wore. James was always ambitious. While other kids played video games, he read business magazines and talked about building an empire. Honor student, varsity soccer captain, working part-time at the grocery store. He balanced it all. When he got into Ohio State on partial scholarship, I was the proudest father in Cleveland. I tried my best to cover what the scholarship didn't. Room and board, textbooks, even fraternity dues. Seeing my son succeed was worth every extra hour. When James graduated in 2020, he wanted to start a marketing agency. He had vision, drive, intelligence, everything except capital. Banks wouldn't touch him. No credit history, no collateral. I helped however I could. co-signed his $50,000 business loan, took a second mortgage on my house for another $30,000 startup capital. When he found a house with Charlotte but couldn't qualify for the mortgage, I didn't hesitate. I co-signed a $280,000 loan, more than double my annual income. The bank called 3 times to confirm I understood the risk. That's my son. Family helps family. James's agency took off fast. Within 18 months, he was making more than I ever earned. BMW instead of his college Honda. The house became a backdrop for sophisticated parties. Expensive suits, country club membership, moving in circles I never imagined. Then came Charlotte. She was from the family James always aspired to join. Her father, William, owned half the commercial real estate downtown. Her mother, Grace, sat on charity boards. They lived in Cleveland's most exclusive neighborhood. When James brought Charlotte home, I saw love in his eyes, but also hunger for the world she represented. Wealth, status, connections that seemed so far out of reach. For the first time, I worried that maybe I helped my son achieve something that was changing him into someone I didn't recognize. By 2023, James's marketing agency was pulling in $2.3 million annually. $2.3 million. I still remember the day he told me that number. I had to ask him to repeat it twice because I couldn't believe it. My son was making more money in a year than I'd made in my entire career. He landed major clients I'd only seen on billboards around Cleveland. Tech companies, law firms, even a few restaurants that charged more for one meal than I spent on groceries in a week. His client list read like a who's who of Cleveland's business elite. James moved his agency into a trendy downtown office space. Floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick walls, one of those modern spaces that looked more like an art gallery than a workplace. When he gave me a tour, I was genuinely impressed. My son had built something real, something substantial. Then came the engagement. Charlotte wasn't just beautiful and smart. She was in her final year of medical school, about to become a doctor. Her father, William, owned multiple commercial properties throughout Cleveland. Shopping centers, office buildings, apartment complexes. The man's real estate portfolio was worth tens of millions. When James announced their engagement at Sunday dinner, I was thrilled. Charlotte seemed perfect for him, intelligent, ambitious, kind, and her family embraced James immediately. They were impressed by his success, his drive, his ability to build a thriving business from nothing. William would clap James on the back at family gatherings and say things like, "This young man is going places. Self-made success, that's what I respect." Grace, Charlotte's mother, would brag to her friends about her future son-in-law's accomplishments. They had the perfect life planned out. Wedding at the country club, honeymoon in Europe, a future filled with success and social status. James fit seamlessly into their world of charity galas and business networking events. I was happy for him. Genuinely, deeply happy. My son achieved everything he'd ever dreamed of and more. But I started noticing small changes. When Charlotte's family would ask about me at dinner, James' answers got shorter. "Dad's doing well, still working construction." He'd quickly change the subject to business or wedding plans. At James's office Christmas party, I overheard him talking to one of his employees. "Yeah, my dad's blue collar, construction work, simple guy, you know?" There was something in his tone I'd never heard before, almost like he was apologizing for me. When Charlotte's parents invited James to their country club for dinner, he didn't mention it to me until afterward. "It was just business talk, Dad. You would have been bored." I figured it was just a phase. Young man trying to fit into a new social circle, wanting to make a good impression on his future in-laws. I raised James to be adaptable, to succeed in any environment. If that meant he needed to downplay his blue-collar roots for a while, I could understand that. But if you think a father's patience has limits, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because you're about to see exactly what happens when that patience runs out. I told myself that once James got more comfortable in Charlotte's world, once the wedding was over and they were settled, things would go back to normal between us. I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. But over the past year, everything changed. James started avoiding our Sunday dinners. For 15 years, we had the same tradition. Every Sunday at 2 p.m., we'd sit down together, catch up on the week, and watch whatever game was on. Suddenly, James was always too busy. Sorry, Dad. Client meeting. Can't make it this week. Wedding planning. Charlotte's family has this thing. The calls became less frequent too. I used to hear from James every few days, just checking in, asking about work, telling me about his latest client win. But my calls started going to voicemail more often. When he did call back, it was hours later, sometimes the next day. Sorry, Dad. Crazy busy at the office. During one dinner at my house, she looked around my modest living room and said, Henry, you should really consider updating your decor. James could help you find an interior designer. When I mentioned I built most of the furniture myself, she smiled that polite smile wealthy people use when they're trying not to be rude. How authentic. Another time, Charlotte suggested that James was outgrowing certain things as his business expanded. Success requires evolving your social circle, don't you think, Henry? James is networking with CEOs and investors now. Image matters in business. I started to understand what she meant when they didn't invite me to their housewarming party last month. When I asked James about it, he looked uncomfortable. Dad, it was more of a professional networking event. Charlotte's dad invited some of his business associates, potential clients for my agency. You would have been bored. Just a bunch of people talking shop. 200 people celebrating my son's new house, the house I helped him buy. And I wasn't good enough to be there. But nothing prepared me for what happened when they started planning their engagement party. James and Charlotte had been talking about this party for months. January 15th at the downtown Marriott. 200 guests, premium bar, live jazz band, the works. This wasn't just a party. It was Charlotte's family's way of introducing James to Cleveland's business elite. Politicians, real estate moguls, the kind of people who controlled the city's economy. When James mentioned the costs, catering alone was $15,000, I offered to help. I had savings, money I'd been setting aside for years. Son, I'd be honored to contribute to your engagement party. James actually laughed. Not a mean laugh, but the kind of laugh you give someone who's offered to help carry something that's clearly too heavy for them. Dad, we've got it completely handled. Charlotte's parents are covering most of it, and my agency is doing well enough to handle the rest. But thanks. I felt like he'd patted me on the head and told me to run along. A week later, I asked James about the guest list. 200 people, huh? That's quite a crowd. I should probably get my suit cleaned. The silence on the phone lasted just a beat too long. Dad, about that, Charlotte's family is handling the invitations. It's mostly their business associates, some of my high-level clients, professional contacts. Professional contacts, I repeated. What about family? Well, Charlotte's whole family will be there, obviously, and some cousins from her mom's side. What about me, James? Another pause. Dad, I don't think you'd really enjoy it. It's going to be pretty formal, lots of business talk. You'd probably be more comfortable. Are you telling me I'm not invited to my own son's engagement party? It's not that simple, Dad. Charlotte's parents have certain expectations about these events. The guest list is curated. Curated. Like I was some piece of furniture that didn't match the decor. My own son's engagement party, and somehow his father didn't make the cut. Tonight was supposed to be simple. I wrapped James's Christmas gifts, a nice watch I saved up for, and a photo album filled with pictures from his childhood. I was planning to drop them off quickly before heading to my sister's place in Florida for the holidays. I knocked on the door at 10:15 p.m., earlier than usual, but I could see the lights were still on and heard laughter coming from inside. James answered the door, and the look on his face wasn't the usual smile I got from my son. He looked panicked. Like I was the last person he wanted to see. Dad, what are you doing here? Not, hey Dad, come on in, or perfect timing, we were just having coffee. Just a flat, almost accusatory, what are you doing here? I held up the gift bag. Just dropping off your Christmas presents before I head to Aunt Jenny's tomorrow. James stepped outside and closed the door behind him, like he was protecting the people inside from me. Look, Dad, Christmas dinner tomorrow is... He ran his hand through his hair, the same gesture he made as a kid when he was about to tell me he'd broken something. Charlotte's family has certain expectations about these things. Expectations? I asked. It's Christmas dinner, James, with family. You know how you can get sometimes, he said, not meeting my eyes. Talking about construction work, your blue-collar stories, getting a little too animated when you've had a beer. Charlotte's parents are more refined. They expect a certain level of sophistication. Sophisticated. That's what my son thought was missing from the man who raised him. It just wouldn't be appropriate, Dad. You understand, right? Standing there in the cold holding Christmas gifts for a son who was telling me I wasn't appropriate enough for his dinner table. Something clicked into place that I'd been trying to ignore for months. James wasn't just embarrassed by my blue-collar job or my modest lifestyle. He was ashamed of everything I taught him. Every lesson about dignity in honest work. Every conversation about treating people with respect, regardless of their status. Every value I tried to instill in him about character being more important than wealth. He rejected all of it. The man standing in front of me, in his expensive suit and his beautiful house, looking at his father like I was some kind of problem to be managed. This wasn't the son I'd raised. This was someone who learned to measure worth by bank accounts and social status. Someone who decided that the man who sacrificed everything for his success wasn't good enough to sit at his table. You're ashamed of me, I said. It wasn't a question. James looked away. It's not personal, Dad. It's just business. Image matters in Charlotte's world. Image matters, I repeated, and I hurt your image. You're a good man, Dad, but Charlotte's family moves in different circles, successful circles. You just feel out of place. There it was. The truth is he'd been dancing around for months. I wasn't successful enough for my own son's Christmas dinner. The man who co-signed his loans, guaranteed his mortgage, worked double shifts to pay for his college, I wasn't successful enough to deserve a seat at the table I helped him afford. I looked at James, really looked at him, and realized that somewhere along the way, I'd lost my son completely. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just looked at my son and said, "You know what, James? You're absolutely right. I wouldn't fit in." I handed him the gift bag, got in my embarrassing Honda Civic, and drove home. December 27th, I made my first move. I called the bank at 9 a.m. "This is Henry Carter. I need to cancel the automatic mortgage payment for 1847 Riverside Drive, effective immediately." The woman sounded confused. "Mr. Carter, that's $3,200 monthly. Are you sure?" "I'm absolutely sure. I'm done paying for it." But that was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, I systematically dismantled the financial support I'd been secretly providing James for 3 years. I dissolved Carter Holdings, the shell company guaranteeing his mortgage. Without that guarantee, the bank would demand he qualify for the full loan on his own, which he couldn't. Then I terminated contracts with his 3 biggest clients: Metropolitan Consulting, Riverside Marketing Solutions, Cleveland Business Development, all shell companies I created to give James steady work. 60% of his revenue, gone overnight. Within a week, James started getting frantic calls. "The mortgage company. Your payment was returned and your automatic payment canceled. We need to discuss your account immediately." His business was hemorrhaging money. 3 major clients, $400,000 in annual contracts, terminated without explanation. James called me January 3rd, panic in his voice. "Dad, something's happening. The mortgage company says there's a problem, and 3 of my biggest clients just canceled. Charlotte's freaking out about wedding expenses. It's like someone's sabotaging me." "That's tough, son," I said calmly. "Business can be unpredictable." But all at once, someone was sabotaging him. But James had no idea that his construction worker, father, the one not sophisticated enough for Christmas dinner, was systematically destroying his entire financial foundation. And I was just getting started. January 15th arrived, the engagement party at the downtown Marriott. James was barely holding it together after 2 weeks of financial collapse, but Charlotte insisted the party go on. 200 guests filled the ballroom, Cleveland's business elite, the same people too sophisticated for a construction worker to meet. I showed up, uninvited, at 8:30 p.m., wearing my best suit, carrying a briefcase. James saw me and went white. "Dad, what are you doing here? I'm dealing with a financial crisis and..." "I know exactly what you're dealing with, son." I walked to the microphone before he could stop me. The room went silent. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give a special toast to my son James. My name is Henry Carter. Most of you don't know me because I wasn't sophisticated enough to be invited. You see, I'm just a construction worker who drives a 2015 Honda Civic. I opened my briefcase and pulled out my documents, but I have a confession about James's success story. I created Sterling Capital LLC for his startup loan. Carter Holdings guaranteed his mortgage. His biggest clients? Shell companies I established and funded. James's face went green. For 10 years, I've been mining cryptocurrency. Bitcoin at $30, Ethereum at $8. I'm worth $12 million. Every dollar of James's success came from his embarrassing construction worker father, his mortgage, business loans, even Charlotte's medical school debt. Charlotte's father stepped forward. That's impossible. The financial collapse James is experiencing? That's me, removing my support after he said I wasn't good enough for his Christmas table. Charlotte yanked off her ring and threw it at James's feet. You lied to me. Everything about you is fake. She stormed out with her parents. James stood surrounded by the wreckage of his fake empire, finally understanding what his life looked like without his father's support. Sometimes the best revenge is simply telling the truth at exactly the right moment. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and share with others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.